On a recent trip to Seattle, I decided to take a day to explore the Olympic Peninsula. I met up with my brother-in-law and we took the ferry over to Bainbridge Island, did one of the top hikes in the area in Mount Storm King, saw a waterfall, and had some excellent seafood. Here's how we spent 24 hours in the Olympic Peninsula, and let me know what your favorite spot there is in the comments. Also, special thanks to Noom for sponsoring this video. Let's jump into it. The hiking area that we were going to was about 3 hours from Seattle, so we decided to take the ferry the night before and then grab a hotel close to where we were hiking. You can go out there for a day trip, but it was an easy 3-hour drive each way, which is a long day, and we wanted to be able to get on the trail early to start the hike. The ferry to Bainbridge Island is one of my favorite things to do in the Seattle area. Being from Southern California, it's just cool to get to drive your car onto a boat and then to get out and explore as you're crossing the water. Plus the views of downtown Seattle as you're leaving, then Bainbridge Island as you're arriving, and Mount Rainier out in the distance are incredible. Heading back down to the car because the ferry is about to board and we're the first one off. As you get close, they'll tell you to get back in your car so you're ready to drive off when the ferry docks. This will drop you right in the middle of the Bainbridge Island downtown area. If you have the time, Bainbridge is an awesome place to explore. There's good eateries, there's good ice cream, coffee. Definitely take a little bit of time to explore here. It was already late in the day when we got there and we still had an hour and 45-minute drive ahead of us to Port Angeles, so we just hit the road and continued on. Made it into Point Angeles, got something to eat. It's like 9:30 and we're gonna get up early to hike tomorrow, so I will see you tomorrow. We started our day of hiking with some coffee at a drive-through coffee shop, which was the only place that was open. From there, it was about a 25-minute drive into Olympic National Park to where the trailhead was. Once you reach Lake Crescent, there's some pullouts and you're definitely going to want to take them as there's some awesome photo opportunities. We wanted to start this hike really early because it's one of the most popular on the Olympic Peninsula and it gets really busy. After a 25-minute drive and our coffee, we're heading out on the trail up to Mount Storm King. Today we're heading out on the Falls Trail and then we're going to cut over to Mount Storm King and then we're going to finish by looking at the falls. This is my brother-in-law Joel who is joining me on the hike today. The trail begins by going past the ranger station and along Lake Crescent. There are a lot of great views if you want to walk down towards the beach. Saying goodbye to Lake Crescent, you'll go under the road and start the trail towards Marymere Falls. This is another reason why the area is so popular, as Marymere Falls is one of the easiest waterfalls to see in the Olympic National Park and lots of people visit every day. So in case you were wondering if this is going to be a tough trail, this is just the start. It basically is like you're going up and there's going to be roots. I'm getting a little worried. This hike is only 4 miles round trip, but it's incredibly challenging as it has 2,000 feet of vertical gain on the way to the top. We've gone up about 500 feet of elevation and we have a flat part for like 30 seconds before we continue up. We're now climbing up roots in order to continue to go forward. As you'll see later, the vertical elevation is only one of the tough parts, and there is a section at the top that requires you to use ropes in order to continue. Also, I recommend taking hiking poles as that'll help a lot on the way down. We're right around the 1 mile mark. We got our first view. Wow, look at those views. So cool. Little taste. When you get to around 1.5 miles, you'll be at about 1,500 feet of elevation gain and you'll start getting some good views out over Lake Crescent. This was where we saw the sun for the first time as we started the trail at 7 a.m. and the sun was blocked by the mountain. We have reached the end of the maintained trail. From here, it's got a little bit of ropes and it gets crazy getting to the top. We'll see how crazy it is though. This section is where Mount Storm King gets its reputation as a dangerous hike. When you leave the end of the maintained trail, you only have about a 1/4 mile left, but it's very steep with decent drop-offs and lots of slippery rock and dirt. So far we haven't ran into some ropes, there's some coming up, but it is a pretty narrow trail with a decent drop-off. Here's the start of the rope section. There's a whole bunch of gloves if you want to use them that people have left. And I think there's a couple. This is the first of the ropes. Thank you for leaving these gloves for me, kind stranger. I will put them to good use. If If you don't want to deal with the rope section, you can get some pretty good views from here, and then you can always turn around and go back.
Whoa, Joel's leaving the ropes behind. That's a legit adventurer right there. That's a little narrow of a pass right there. Made it to the top of the first rope section, starting the next one.
In some of these sections, it doesn't look like the ropes are very necessary, but the problem is just the dirt is really slippery and there's some decent drops on the right-hand side.
Definitely helpful if you need them though, as it is a steep drop. One last long rope section before we make it to, I think, which is the summit right there.
Once you finish the last rope section, you'll have to scramble up about 25 feet on some slick rock in order to make it to the official endpoint. This is not actually the summit of Mount Storm King, but this is the turnaround point for the hike.
Wow, that is epic.
When you reach the summit, the views you can see from here over Lake Crescent are some of the best on the Olympic Peninsula. We just grabbed a spot to relax at, made some snacks, and started soaking in the views. Before exploring more of the Olympic Peninsula, I wanted to give a special shout out to this week's sponsor, Noom. I'm huge into analytics and using a data-driven approach to track all sorts of things in my life. I track my sleep, my steps, my activity, how much I stand, but it wasn't until a few months ago when I started using Noom that I realized I should also be tracking my food and my water intake. Making this one change and connecting with the scientific-based approach that Noom has to encourage you to create a healthier lifestyle has been a big help for me. Every day there's articles that you can read that help you understand everything from your triggers to the way certain foods affect your body. I really appreciated how they helped me to learn more about food and the color-based system that puts food into different categories. They make a big point that no food is bad and that moderation is important, and you guys know I love a good donut every once in a while. Being able to see how they allocate my calories every day and understanding that foods that are higher in caloric density and water can make me fuller longer has been huge into helping me meet my health goals. I've actually lost 8 pounds since I started Noom a few months ago, but for me, understanding more about food and my relationship to it has been hugely helpful in making sustainable changes. If you're interested in checking it out, you can go to noom.com/throughmylens to get your free evaluation and create your own custom health plan. Now back to the video, we're exploring the Olympic Peninsula.
Shout out to Noom for sponsoring this video and to Joel for bringing us some healthy snacks.
It's pretty hard to beat a small charcuterie board at the top of a mountain.
Yeah, it's a pretty good drop down there, and you can see where we started at that parking lot. And then you can see this entire lake. Plus, way out there is Canada. One of the benefits of spending the night is that we got to have the entire summit to ourselves. This is a popular trail, but it takes a long time to get over here from Seattle. Saying goodbye to the summit, we're gonna head down, go to a waterfall, and then start the drive back to Seattle.
Honestly, the endpoint of this hike blew me away and was exactly the type of views I was looking for on the Olympic Peninsula. As we left the summit though, we got to encounter the ropes again, and of course, going down with the ropes is a lot more sketchy than going up.
Gloves are a good call for the way down.
I did talk to people on the trail who turned around because of the rope section, and I would definitely not do this hike if it's been raining, as it would be too slippery.
It may not look like this is steep enough to have the ropes, but the problem is that it's just incredibly loose with the dirt and the sand, so it's really easy to slip if you're not holding on to something.
As you make it down to the last rope section and you're looking out over Lake Crescent and out towards the ocean, it's one of the better views I've seen on a hiking trail in a long time.
Donating my gloves back to the pile for the next people. And saying goodbye to the rope section. We're back on the maintained trail.
From here, we finished all the downhill quickly and got back to the split at the start of the trail.
Look at how dirty my shoes are too. Yeah, I know. That's a dirty trail. We have made it back down and now we're heading out on the quarter-mile trail to the waterfall before we head on.
Once you make it back to the Marymere Falls trail, there'll be crowds of people, especially if you go on a summer weekend like we did. This is a top hike in Olympic National Park. It's easy and it leads to a big waterfall.
Look at those roots, this massive tree.
As someone who spends most of their time hiking in Southern California, I love any time I'm in the Pacific Northwest and get to see all of the green. Plus, being able to walk along the creek, cross bridges, and see the beautiful scenery is something I never take for granted. This trail has a little bit of uphill at the end, but it's only about 100 feet. It felt like a lot after hiking Mount Storm King though.
You see the falls poking through. It's actually pretty tall. Made it to the waterfall. That's pretty epic.
This waterfall is about 100 feet tall and it cascades over the rocks into a small pool below. It was stunning in the late summer and I can't imagine how much flow there is in the spring during a good rainy year. There was a bunch of people at the falls with us, but the viewing platform was great and allowed everybody to get a good view.
Be sure to go to both waterfall viewpoints. It's totally worth it. That's an incredible waterfall, a lot taller than I thought it was gonna be. We're heading back out and we're gonna go get some seafood before heading back to Seattle. As we got back, it is a Sunday at about 11 and this parking lot is completely full, so just FYI.
Someone was really excited to get our parking spot when we left, and we drove along Lake Crescent about 45 minutes east to the town of Sequim. I had been told about this spot called the Salty Girls, and oysters are one of my favorite things, but I only eat them a couple times a year just because I'm very picky about where I eat them at. Luckily, Salty Girls had a killer selection of oysters. If you're an oyster fan, note that they had 4 different types, multiple sauces, horseradish, and lemon. If you're not an oyster fan, maybe give them a try, you might like them.
Cheers.
Down the gullet.
Oh,
it's so good.
The rest of the food was great as well, and I had fresh poke and Joel had a crab sandwich.
Joel is taking down the last oyster.
There's also a good coffee shop a block away called Rain Shadow Coffee Roasters if you want that instead of food.
If you like seafood and oysters, Salty Girls was basically about as good as it gets for a post-hike snack. We got one more stop on the way back to Seattle.
From here to Seattle, it's about 2 hours drive, and you can either take the Bainbridge ferry back or you can drive all the way around through Tacoma. It's almost exactly the same amount of time to do either one. While I would normally just take the ferry, Joel told me about the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, so I decided to see that instead. We did some research on the way there and found out that the Narrows Park is one of the best places to get a view of the bridge from. This park is free and it has a small parking lot and a trail that takes you down to the beach. Note that if you're going to cross the bridge afterwards and you don't have a plates pass, you have to go and exit back in order to get to the toll booth.
Joel introduced me to this bridge. This is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge and we're at Narrows Park right now with an epic view. You can also just barely see the tip of Mount Rainier out there.
This is a dual suspension bridge and the longest span is around 2,800 feet. If you want to see something crazy, search on YouTube for the original bridge and how it moved in the wind. It only lasted for about 4 months and this new one was built in the 1950s and has been standing since.
That's it for our adventure around the Seattle Olympic Peninsula area. Thanks Noom for sponsoring this video. You can take your free assessment by clicking the link in the description. And we'll see you on the next one.